Today we'll talk about extraneous versus valid solutions for radical equations. So again, we're using radical equations, and all we want to know is, are the solutions extraneous, valid, or some of both? So here we go. The square root of x equals -5. Well, we know that if we get a square root equal to a negative number, that can't happen. So in previous exercises, we've said things like no solution, NS. Well, in this particular exercise, we're going to say, because this is not possible, the solution is extraneous. And what that looks like is, if I solve this, I square both sides, I end up with x equals 25. Because -5 times -5 is 25. If I plug that 25 back in here to recreate the equation, so the square root of 25 equals -5, and then I simplify, and I end up with a new equation, square root of 25 is 5, equals -5. This equation is not true. That's what makes it extraneous. So let's go ahead and solve this next equation over here. We'll go ahead and cube this. That'll undo the cubed root, and then we will cube this over here, and we end up with x equals -3 times -3 times -3 is going to be -27. So then we can say, well, what is the cubed root of -27? Because this is a cubed root, I can use a negative. In the square root, I cannot. What's the cubed root of -27? It should equal -3. Well, it is -3 because the only way to get a negative is to multiply it an odd number of times. So negative times a negative times a negative remains a negative. So this is actually correct. So this is going to be valid solutions. In our next problem, we'll again use some inverse operations. So we'll square it. We end up with 11x minus 30 equals x squared. Then I can go ahead and subtract these over to get them all on the same side. That's now 0. Add 30. That's now 0. And so I have this equation here, and it ends up being x squared minus 11x plus 30 equals 0. And then I go ahead and I solve this by factoring. So what two numbers multiply to 30 and add up to -11? I'll just draw my graphic organizer. Okay, what's going to add up to -11 and what's going to multiply to 30? Well, that's going to be negative -5 and -6. Okay, that'll make it work. So this factors to x minus 5 and x minus 6. So then my solutions, for this then are going to be +5 and +6, because 5 minus 5 is 0 and 6 minus 6 is 0, which gives me 0. So here are my two solutions, and I'm going to plug them in and check them. 11 times 5 is 55. 55 minus 30 becomes some positive number, and I can square root that. Then if I plug in 6 here, I get 66 minus 30, which is also some positive value, and I can square root it. So these are all valid. These are all valid here. Moving on to my next equation. So I'll go ahead and begin this one first by subtracting 6. Then I have the square root of x plus 36 equals x minus 6. Then I can go ahead and square both sides, and I end up with x plus 36 is equal to x minus 6 times x minus 6. And as I take the time to go through and distribute these, I end up with x squared minus 6x minus 6x. So I'll combine those. 2 minus 12x. Again, minus 6, minus 6, minus 12. I'm just adding those two terms together from the beginning. And then negative 6 times negative 6 is a positive 36. So in this particular scenario, we've got x plus 36 equals x squared minus 12x plus 36. I go ahead and use my inverse operation, so I subtract x, and I subtract x, and that is 0 now. And then I subtract 36 and subtract 36. Well, 36 minus 36 is 0. 36 minus 36 over here again is 0. And I'm just left with 0 is equal to x squared minus 13x. If I use my graphic organizer here, I need them to add up to negative 13. And because I don't have anything over here, this is really a plus 0. So I need them to multiply to 0. Well, that's negative 13 times 0. If I add them, I get negative 13. If I multiply them, I get 0. So my two factors are x minus 13 and x plus 0. Or that could just be x, but just to keep it looking similar, we'll put the plus 0 in. Well, the solution then is 13 and 0. If I plug 13 in, I end up with, just go ahead and make a little more room for work. So there's the original problem right there. And I'll just come right over here and keep working. So if I plug in 13, then I end up with the square root of 13 plus 36 plus 6 should equal 13. So again, I plugged in 13 here and 13 there. This becomes the square root of 49 plus 6 should equal 13. And that is 7 plus 6 should equal 13. Hey, that works. Awesome. I'm going to change colors just because I've done a lot in this color, but this is still the same problem. Okay, still the same problem using this idea here. Using this idea here, I'm going to go ahead and say my other solution is 0. So the square root of 0 plus 36 plus 6 should equal 0. Well, that would be the square root of 36 plus 6 should equal 0, which would be 6 plus 6 should equal 0, which means 12 equals 0. That is obviously not true. Not true. So I have one solution that's extraneous, and I have a second solution, or my first solution, I guess, that was valid. So for this question, the answer will be both. I've shown you one example of each style of question you'll use. Because I've only shown you one example of each style, you might need to rewatch this video once or twice. Please take the time to do that. Good luck.